Well, hello everybody. Welcome to Sonic Talk, episode 756. This is a sort of rather free-form version of Sonic Talk. Normally we have very fixed topics to do with music technology, electronic music and all of those things. This time it's going to be a bit more free-form because we've just come back from Berlin, the greatest synth show on the calendar. Lovely weather, lots and lots and lots of releases. I mean, really, it's like they've been penned up behind the dam of... I don't know, what would you dam a synthesizer releases up with? I don't know, some kind of substance. And it's like anyway, and it's all flooded out into the world of synths. Before I get to introduce our guests, yeah, that was a terrible metaphor. I thought I started it well, but I hadn't thought it through at all. I do beg your pardon. But I'm going to play, before I go, I'm going to encourage you to join us on Patreon. We have a couple of exclusive videos there from YouTube. From Superbooth, as well as all the other stuff that we do. Have you considered joining us on Patreon? For a mere couple of cups of coffee a month, maybe one, depending on your taste, you get access to all of our ad-free content. That's everything we post to YouTube. Monetized is also posted to our Patreon feed. We get Sonic Talk pre-show. We also, actually, exclusive videos. I've just posted one of the third wave from Groove Synthesis, which was a great synth. I just reviewed it. There's some extra video there exclusive to Patreon. Plus, you get samples, downloads, all kinds of other bits and pieces. And if you join before the end of the show at the upper tier, which is still only $6 a month, you will get your name in credits at the end of every Sonic Talk as a big thank you. Thank you very much for those who already have joined us. Anyway, back to the show. Yes, indeed, it is back to the show. So, yeah, let's get on to our guests. We've got a collection. We've got three of us went and one of us didn't. So we'll start with Gaz, because Gaz saw it from afar. Gaz Williams, of course, YouTuber and music technologist. And also, you actually did something really exciting. I heard you played a fuzz bass solo in front of a crowd of 15,000 people at the Eurovision Song Contest event. So, good on you.
Yeah.
Oh, you've gone very quiet.
Oh, am I quiet?
It's all right. I got you. It was me. My fault. Yeah.
I was great gig, but I was just always just so torn about not being at Superbooth, especially given what a bumper year it has been. I mean, but briefly touching on the Eurovision gig, just for a bit of context. So we were the headliners of Friday night major event, Eurovision Village, which took place in Liverpool, and it took place immediately outside the Liver building, which is maybe the most iconic building in Liverpool, and it's famously the Liver birds on the roof there are the kind of I don't know what, the guardian angels of Liverpool overlooking everything. So felt very much in the presence of the Liver birds, and not the 70s sitcom ones either. For those
disappointing.
British enough to know what I'm talking about. But what was just fantastic about it was it was full to capacity, but all areas where outside of the actual thing itself were full of people, rooftops, people, on balconies, so just an amazingly unique and
nice,
incredible experience. But I think my favorite thing really though is that with the Charlotte Church Pop Dungeon is all raw. There's no backing tracks. It's a 4-piece band at the heart, bass, drums, guitar and keys, all played live, and raw and heavy and dirty. And I just feel that was such a kind of very different from
juxtaposition
stuff, all the backing track crap that goes on. We're like doing bringing the real deal into that kind of environment. So I felt I was doing my kind of subversive best, really. And I wore my dear late mother-in-law's dress in the concert as well.
Right, okay. Why ever not? Well, I'm glad to hear that, Gaz. I mean, I bet it was fantastic. But, I mean, turning back to Superbooth, obviously, it was a big event and there was a lot of stuff. I mean, it was a bit of a whirlwind for us, I must admit. Maybe what I'll do is I'll introduce the other guests and then we'll sort of come round and work our way through the huge pile of stuff that there is. So much stuff. Okay, right. Okay, well, let's join Mr. Robin Vincent, Molten Music Tech, YouTuber and wearer of fancy shirts. I saw you over there in Berlin. You came on Saturday, which was your usual kind of dawn raid, arrive at midday, stay. I don't know what time you left. Did you stay the night, or did you go back that night?
Yeah. No, we stayed the night and did an awful lot of walking around Berlin on the Sunday, which was great. We went on a bit of a David Bowie mission because my kid Arthur, who I brought along, is a big fan and wanted to see his apartment and Hansa Studios, things like that. So we walked all over that part of Berlin, which was great. Very exciting.
Nice. That sounds fantastic. That's fantastic. Okay. And also we have Mr. Matt Hodson, aka maths.com, or well, he's aka Maths, who actually played a gig at Superbooth. Went down really well. Sadly, not the biggest PA on the Seaside stage anymore. I think they moved the Function 1 over to the other stage, but still, by all accounts, I couldn't make it. That was the day I was in A&E, funnily enough, but it was rocking. How are you, Matt?
That's all right, Nick. I'll let you off. And yeah, I do hope your daughter's all right. I'm fine. Yeah, I've just been putting together my own video actually, summarising Superbooth. So it's all very still fresh in my mind, and it just occurred to me as I was making it just how many cool things I saw and how many cool things actually I didn't see. There was so many things as I was putting the video together. I'm like, I didn't get to play on that. I didn't get to play on that. I didn't get to play on that. There's just tons and tons of stuff. Gaz, you was missed. We all missed you, but a gig like the Eurovision, don't blame you, mate. And Robin, I didn't know you was there on Saturday. It would have been lovely to have met you.
Oh, hang on a second.
Sounds like there's an answer phone going off. I'll just kill that. So there we go. It's all the usual suspects and good stuff. Yeah. So Gaz,
was that Herr Schneider ringing us up or something? Does he want to get in on this?
Well, it'd be nice to have him, but it would be even more. It would be extremely chaotic. He's he has a very flighty topics brain. He kind of jumps about all over the place. But yeah, it was great to see him. He's done a fantastic job.
Yeah, they did just jumping straight into it. They did a documentary on Superbooth as well, which we all saw the preview of. It's still not fully edited yet, but there's independent companies done a documentary. They've used a load of your material from Sonicstate, Nick, and they pulled together this kind of hour-long documentary about it all, and it focuses on Schneider pulling it together with Mr. Dörpfer and the kind of legacy and what it's meant and what it's created and, you know, what it is and how it's grown. And he makes it look so easy putting on something like this. It really does. And when you meet him around the festival and you have a chat with him, he's got all the time in the world. And yeah, he's just one of those guys who makes it so easy. It really occurred to me just how grateful we should be of people who put all that time and energy into putting something together that is, it's not really about the money. It's about the community, and it's about those people who are making these amazing modules that we can go away with and bring out our desires as music makers and do things and connect with music in magical and wonderful ways. So should be really thankful for what they're doing. And watching that documentary it really did summarize it very well. And I urge anyone to watch it once it's finished.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose before we go into jump in, I want to say a big shout out to all of the people who worked on our side of things to make things work, which was obviously Andy, there was Ed and Chris and Simon Forsyth and Chris B from Battery Operated Orchestra, who's doing all the stories, and Ben, who's a new addition to the team, who edited every single one of those 100 videos, bar a couple, on his own. Just amazing. And also, of course, all the people over at Superbooth to sort of, you know, who made it work as well. And of course, our sponsors couldn't have done it without them, Soma Electronics and GPU Audio, plus all of the other smaller supporters who we did various video things for as well. Anyway, that out of the way. Gaz, from afar, What was the sort of? I mean, obviously, our first video was George's Super Gemini, and that sort of set the tone, rather, didn't it? It was kind of like really set the tone. Shall I play a little bit of that before we go into it, just so that just because I can?
What a beast!
What a beast! Let me see. I've got a button. That would be this one.
Hi, Nick. Hello.
Another spring, another Berlin show. He played this amazing. So this is the Super Gemini, which basically has. It's like two Super 5s, I suppose, because it's a 10 voice or 20 voice non-binaural, but each synth is represented by an entire row of discrete controls. So it's essentially it's like a CS80 in that sense. You can access all the parameters. There's no kind of doubling up, which is very unusual. And this is the only video, the only synthesizer I've ever posted a release for when all the comments, or a majority of the comments, were, I can't believe how cheap it is, when in fact it's still $4,000 or so, but people were expecting it to be quite a lot more than that. And he just did one of his usually fantastic performances, all just improvise. I don't know what you thought about that, Gaz, but I mean, I know he's a Bristol guy and we have fondness of George. I mean, he's a bit of a superstar, isn't he?
Yeah, and he's a good friend of mine. I've been fortunate enough to know George for a long old time. So seeing him go through all the, the different stages and, this feels like this culmination of everything he's been working towards. I've got a Super 6 behind me, which is just the bringer of joy. I'm sure everybody who's got them can kind of relate to this, that there's something about UDO's policy, sort of design ethos, really, which, because like a lack of screen. Now this big new one, no screen, which I know will irk a few people. Yeah. But that still ties into this kind of philosophy. Now, I've known George, 12 years or whatever, and he, this philosophy is something very deep that's been within him all this time. So, having that perspective on George, seeing this now, it just is incredibly exciting, because I know that, if you look through the evolution of the synths, because of course the 008 from Modal was largely George's work, which was the precursor to the Super 6 before he went alone with UDO. So this idea of just like an immediacy and this relationship with the instrument in front of you, like George spent an incredible amount of time in the development of the Super 6, just working on a monophonic voice, for what seemed like a few years, just getting the fundamental tone of it right, the playability, the musicality of it. And you can see that in the way that George plays when he does his demos.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the music just comes out of his machines and in the most beautiful way. And I'm really pleased that this one has got polyphonic aftertouch. I always felt that was a slight missed opportunity.
Yes, that's the big one, isn't it? Yeah,
the capability of the Super 6, and obviously the big touch strip, which, again, ties into the CS80 comparisons. But I also think, a lot of people will be happy to see that 61 key bed as well. But yeah. I think, when it's in front of you, I was party to seeing this before Superbooth, something that I had, God, I was really excited to see the public reaction to this, which has been pretty overwhelming. But I think just to be in front of that thing is going to be an awe-inspiring experience. And I think for new musicians and old musicians alike, I think that it is still very relevant. This is an evolution of a kind of a specific way of doing things. It's not necessarily like the latest, it's not teeming with features. It's a very tightly focused subset of features, which, yeah. Anyway, plenty to say about that for sure.
No, it's beautiful. I did get the price. It's actually $3,500 UK, about $4,000, €4,000. So, astonishingly you know, I know it's still a lot of money, but it's so much less than people thought. It's really quite peculiar. I don't know, Robin, what did you get a chance to see it? I know you were only there for a short time. It was out in Bungalowdorf, so I don't know whether you would have made it out there or not, or whether it's your kind of thing, but it's a thing of beauty.
Oh, well, yeah, definitely. I mean, I didn't see it in person, but certainly it's a beautiful machine. I think the CS80 thing is really interesting. And also, for some reason, whenever I think of the Super 6, I'm always distracted by the binaural nature of it. That seems to be the thing that's talked about, that and the nature of its oscillators. And so it's almost like I've never seen the Super 6 as an actual synthesizer. It just seems to be some kind of equation that we're trying to solve. Whereas this is just pure synthesis loveliness, you know, laid out in a gorgeously designed instrument, and you're not distracted by any of the, don't care what the technology is, this just sounds completely epic. And that's really what you want. You want to have that instant connection to a synthesizer as an instrument, rather than trying to fathom out what it's doing or where it's going and, you know, why it sounds a bit strange. So yeah, no, I think they knocked it out of the park with that fella.
Yeah, and I mean, we were fortunate that we got it on Wednesday, which meant that, you know, it sort of set the tone. It was and it's the biggest video of the show still. I mean, that might change now, but I mean, it was the first one, so maybe that's part of a reason.
Yeah, well, I think Gaz has summed this up very well. Is that this guy, the designer? Sorry, I've forgotten his name. He's got a very strong connection with what he's making and why he's making it and the ethos behind it, and that just comes through so clearly whenever you see him using it and talking about it, rather than it being, I just want to make something that is, you know, it's kind of based around this and it's got this added onto it and there's a place in the market for it. It's kind of like, this is a vision, this needs to come to market, this has to be out there. Even if we don't buy it, you can tell this guy has to make it. And that it's not just true for him. I think that's true for a lot of the makers that we saw around the event. When you're walking in and out and you're talking to them, and it's just like, it's like just opening the door, going in their head for a minute, and then when you're playing with their modules, and it is literally like walking around in their mind and just trying to go, oh, okay, how did you come up with this idea? This is crazy, but I didn't know I needed it really until I got to play with it just now. And I just love that. I love that connection makers have with their products, rather than it just being, I'm just making this for money.
Can I just jump in here? Because last time George was here, I mean, there's loads of instruments here, but he gravitated straight to the Super 6. And because the monitor sounding really great, he just proceeded just to have the most fun playing on his synth, not interested in any of the other things here. You know, just like, whoa, still just finding pure joy and delight in it. And I just was marveling at that. And I think, you know, great to see. George, brilliant.
Yeah, well, I think he did it before. Well, as you know, he did it. If you want to see George wig out on his synths, there's a previous EMOM that we did. In fact, actually, that should point out, we're going to do another EMOM. It was due to be next month, but I sort of decided we just can't take it on. We had EMOM, NAM, and then Superbooth, and there wasn't enough time to promote it. So we will get another one done. It's just not going to be when we thought it was going to be. So do hang in there. Robin, you also had another a choice, didn't you? I'll see if I can get that in, because then this is quite an interesting one, because I didn't film this one. I think Ed filmed this one. I don't really understand what it is, but I'll play a little bit. There should be there we go. We got some video. Oh, hold on a second. There should be some video. Audio. Where's my audio gone?
Can see the video, no audio.
There we go. There it is. Beg your pardon.
Top class demoing there.
Yeah, possibly not.
It on. It's called Art.
So,
and why?
Now, I watched this and I don't fully understand. I think, what I understand of it. Tip-top audio is like polyphonic oscillator control that will help keep your oscillators sort of in tune with each other. So it's a bus or a signal or a kind of a way of working that interfaces with. They have a specific control module, which I think is Octopus, that then will tie in with other and control any other oscillators. Doesn't really matter what they are, and keep them in pitch. Have I got that about right? I mean, you brought it up. up, so you might have to justify this to me a little bit, because I really don't
something
know.
like that. I kept watching different videos on it going, I still don't get what this is. But I think I do now, and it's something to do with a universal asynchronous receiving transmitting system. It's basically a serial connection. So it's UART, but they call it ART because that's simpler for them. So it's an RS-232, like your old serial port you used to have on the back of an old computer that ran your mouse back in the day. But it's a good version of that. So that is essentially what's going down the cable. So it's just a regular patch cable, this ART cable, I think. But it's using these two connections here just to give you like Morse code out the other end. So it's sending instructions. It's not sending, well, ultimately it's voltage, but it's not sending what we see as control voltage. It's not sending 1 volt per octave, that kind of thing. It's sending a series of instructions very, very fast between two voice controllers, I suppose, at either end. And that way it can send note information and tuning information, reference stuff. So your analog oscillator with your ART input becomes a digitally controlled oscillator, I guess. And right. That's why it's able to stay together. And that also means that this ART cable can send polyphonic information. It doesn't have to be one note at a time. It could be, well, it will be, because it's a serial connection, but it's so fast so it to be simultaneous. Does that make sense? So,
yeah.
So that's sort of the idea. So, because I could not work out what is going down that cable, because they kept talking about these polytip cables, which is actually something else, a companion to it. And all that's doing is using a USB-C cable to carry multi-channel analog audio. It's not doing anything other than that, as far as I can work out. So, because what they decided to do, we want to build polyphonic Eurorack, which is always going to be trouble when it comes to cabling. So they're trying to get around that. So if they can send polyphonic data down this ART cable, that's just one cable to controlling a polyphonic module. And then that polyphonic module will output 6 lots of audio or 8 lots of audio from all the oscillators. Rather than having that spill out in a whole load of cables, spill that out in the little USB-C cable into your polyphonic filter, into your polyphonic VCA. So that reduces all of that cable mess down to something very simple, while at the same time introducing digital control over everything, so that it's very tight.
Does it analyze the pitch of the returning signal so that it can keep them all in shape, as it were? Because I mean, that's one of the problems with modular polyphonic is you have got a discrete per voice kind of scenario, which is essentially you've still got to tune each oscillator or each voice against itself to make sure it's in tune. So that would kind of, if it could do that, that would make sense. But it would also remove some of the charm, I feel.
Absolutely. I mean, at the same time as I'm going, this is really interesting and exciting, and I feel I'm completely ideologically composed to the whole idea. But it's still interesting and fascinating because I don't want to lose all of this control and patchability and slight crappiness, because I imagine the first thing they're going to do is introduce a vintage knob, which is going to reintroduce the pitch variations that you've just cured, because that's what we like, and it's like, why are we doing this? But I believe there's a tuning button, an auto tune button on the Octopus, which is like the bass controller module that will send out to everything and tune it all. I mean, it's clever.
Well, that makes sense, and you can do scaling. Expert sleepers do the similar sort of thing, I suppose. And Matt, I mean, you use polyphonic stuff in your set to great effect. I think you use the polycinematic, isn't it? The Nobula thing. Is that right?
Polycinematic, yeah, it's using that. But I'm using that with MIDI because, as Robin says, using polyphony inside of a Eurorack, there's a lot of cabling involved. Although the qubit chord, where is it? It's down here somewhere. The qubit chord, that gets around a lot of that because all the oscillators can be tuned and that kind of thing. That's quite a nice module, by the way, the Chord 2 by Qubit, if you want to get into a bit of polyphony. But thinking about this art thing got me wondering, is there potential for us to evolve modular synthesis from what we know it, which is built on, it's quite old technology really, and up until now we've had CV and gate essentially, I think, and MIDI's in there now, And then they're talking about this art. Is there another kind of signal we haven't yet thought about? Something that we can use?
Well, there is a preset bus, isn't there, in some modules? I think there's a preset bus in some modules.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember what that is now, because someone did tell that to me, and
it uses
just trying to think of an. Go on, Gaz.
Oh, the bus. It uses the dope for like within the kind of the bus board on what you plug your modules into.
Yeah,
there is a bunch of extra control signals that can be used.
It was Shackmat, I think that told me about that they use it as well. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it caught me out on the Waldorf KB37 when I bought the dope for A116, the analog synth voice. I brought it home. I put it into the KB37, patched in the CV and then the gate, started playing, and all the tracking was really rancid. I was like, oh god, no, this is awful. And then so I looked online and there's all these trimmer pots inside this little analog synth. Opened it up. Got it, tried to change all the tuning, and it was, spent hours, and it was just making it worse. And anyway, I put it back in, and I pulled out the cables, except for the audio cable. I think I might have just leant on the keyboard, and it made a sound just like, nothing's patched into the dope.
Yeah.
You can see what I done. I didn't know this. I was like a newbie. I mean, I know now, but the Dopefer system, it puts the CV and gate from.
So you had it set up essentially like 200% keyboard tracking, basically.
Yeah, and now I can't get the Dopefer to track, and I've messed it up, with all that. So there's definitely a warning in there for someone out there.
Ouch.
Yeah.
That is painful.
It's just interesting to wonder if there is any potential for new signals that we're not using yet. I don't know whether it is using. I don't know. It's always going to come back to kind of changing the pitch or opening the envelopes, and then you've got modulation and triggering something, I guess. Is there a combination of the two that we still haven't looked at or utilized? I don't know. I was just got jamming in my head walking around with the dog, going for a walk. I don't just walk around with the dog. I take the dog for a walk. And I was just thinking, what else is it? What else have we not got to yet? There's plenty of different ways to interface with a modular synth. You can control it with light. You can control it with putting clips on a plant or whatever you're into. But maybe there's a potential here to start looking forward as to what this could be. And it doesn't always have to stand in the past, is what I'm trying to say.
What about MIDI 2.0 on mini jack? MIDI 2.0 on mini jack.
Yeah, well, it sort of is, I suppose, and I suppose it would make sense.
Yeah.
I suppose the thing is having that Dopefer bus. I mean, it doesn't really get utilised because you could remove an awful lot of cables and stuff just by having that MIF module. Not all modules talk it, I suppose. So that's the issue, isn't it? The Dopefer stuff does, obviously, and there are certain other. I think IntelliGel does. I can't remember now, but there's So
is
I'm not
TikTok going to license this new art to other module manufacturers? Is it and that kind of thing? Do you know?
Yeah, absolutely. They're going to open source it to some degree, or at least they're encouraging other manufacturers to get on board, which I think is the only way it's going to work. It has to infiltrate, and it has to be easy. Otherwise, people building their own modular or
that old chestnut
are just not going to be interested.
Standards within standards within standards. Yes, well, that's an interesting. So okay, so who, Gaz? What other favourite stuff? I'll see if, what was in your favourite list as well. I may have a video, and I'll see if I can bring it into lines.
I've got a very long list. I made a list of 10, and I've got a bunch of honourable mentions. So I think we have to talk about the Norand mono, don't we? Because
well, in that case, yes, let me do that because I've got that. Yeah, that. Hey, Matthew, how you doing?
Hello, Nick. I'm great. Thank you so much.
So I've heard a lot about this. This is an interesting new. It's analog, right? Analog synth.
Yeah, absolutely, fully analog synth.
Tell me about it.
So on the surface, this is sort of a basic baseline synthesizer with a sequencer, but once you dig a little deeper into it, there's a ton of great features that makes it really unique. So right now I've got a basic patch running in, so let's go to iZotope and then put some filtering in there. So the very, very cool features in the analog path is that each of the parameters has its own modulator and envelope. So let's say you want to modulate the filter, you just select it, it will turn red, and now I can have an LFO on the frequency.
Yeah, this is. You need to watch the whole thing, but basically, what he's got is an analog synth at the heart, but it's controlled by FPGA, and the FPGA gives every single parameter on the synthesizer an LFO into audio rates and an envelope. And the LFOs can be synced together, they can be free running, they can be synced at different rates, and they go and they just do everything. But not only that, you've got like parameter morphing, you've got extremely fast patch changes, like sort of bass station. So you can have it in a kind of drum pad mode where you hit a pad and it changes to a bass drum sound. You've got full voice. I mean, it's just a really, the chap, it was on the Arturia distributed booth, and they said, oh, you should check it out. And it was like, I was a bit peeved because we'd been to Arturia 5 times and hadn't been able to film something. And after a while, you just think, oh, well, sod it, I'm not going to do it. But the guy said, you really should check this out. And I'm glad I did, because I don't think anybody else filmed anything. And it just blew my mind. I mean, it's not terribly cheap. It's about 800 quid, but it's a Mark II. But there's so many cool features. The guy has got a really brilliant mind. So Gaz, I guess you watched the same video as I shot, so.
Yeah, and I was with you on that journey, of just thinking, oh, it's just a little monosynth, and then just as it starts to reveal itself, you're just thinking, wow, how many clever ideas. But of course, that little keyboard is worth mentioning, because it's got like a full,
Keith McMillan type thing, yeah.
Yeah, three dimensions of touch on the little keyboard, just on top of everything else. But yeah, the morphing sounds really, really cool, I think. Oh my goodness, where'd you start? The interface is just beautifully done, isn't it? It's just really, everything about it is just like very, very modern thinking, I think, but coupled with the fact that it's an analog signal path. So
yeah, no, it's cool. A little bit on the rich side. It is £800, which does seem quite a lot for us two oscillator mono. But you're getting a kind of almost an entirely new concept here. I don't know, Robin, did you get to see this at all? Is it something that you've been on your radar at all?
Yeah, I mean, I had a play on it. I remember the original one as well. What was interesting about it was it's the amount of cross modulation you could do. You could just crash everything into everything, and this seems to have taken that to another level, I suppose. I quite like the idea that you can just touch something and then route an LFO straight to it without having to fuss around. But it doesn't look like much. I had a play with it thinking, oh yeah, here we go, another little mono synth. Sounds nice. You're able to crunch some things together, and it was very playable without having to understand anything. So it wasn't until I came away that I had any idea of its capability. But it was certainly a fun little thing to play with. And now starting to understand that there's lots of different sort of depths and levels to it, which is really, really interesting, particularly to do anything which is surprising in this space. As you say, in the 2 oscillator monosynth space, what could be done that has not been done already? So good job. It could look more exciting. Is the only thing I would say.
Yeah, it's sort of. I hate to say it needs to be bigger and have. It needs to be bigger and have some ballast in it, so it feels like 800 quid's worth. It's that sort of thing. Yes. You have to. It doesn't look that way, but yeah, that would be a bit weird. I don't know if you got a chance to see it, Matt, but it looks really interesting. You can morph. Yeah. It's got a TR type step thing across the top. The other thing that it's got is, so you could take step, it also recalls patches. So what you can do is you can actually morph between patches depending on the pressure that you put on each individual program point. So you can kind of go morph quick or morph really slowly. It's also, another thing that's kind of interesting is it's got parameter recording, but an internal resolution of something really silly. It's not like 96 ppqn like you get with a regular step sequence. It's extremely high resolution internal parameter recording, so you can do completely different things than you could do with even, say, an electron or whatever, because of the amount of interpolation that that you don't need, because essentially you can edit each individual. Yeah, it's kind of, and you can record sequences with that parameter stuff and then use that as another modulation source or set of modulation. It's pretty powerful, actually. I mean, and I'd like to see it. I mean, yes, it might be a bit expensive, I agree, but I think it's starting to see a really interesting amalgamation of this sort of analog and digital hybrid. Yes, Gaz?
When you're talking about price, if there's one trend that I saw across all the videos, was every single price when announced made me wince a little bit. It's like there is clearly like the price of everything, which and we know why. We won't get drawn into that, but it just like every single price when they were announcing it was kind of significantly more than what it would have been just a few years ago. And I was like thinking, we are things have kind of moved over a little bit in terms of our expectations. Obviously Behringer and some other companies, but are going to be catering for the budget end of the market. But these small manufacturers, I'm sure with good reason, but we saw a definite, maybe where something would have been 199, it was 299. It was like not just like a third or quarter more. But there we go. It's sign of the time, sadly.
There was a few makers as well saying that they can't make things quick enough because again, we don't want to get to it, the chip shortage and all that kind of stuff. They've got the orders. There's people wanting to get these things, but they just can't get them built and out to people quick enough. So it must be very frustrating for them.
And they can't find the parts. The parts have all gone up. When you take, so a part might go up by, if it costs £1, it then becomes £1.30. Say, for instance, you multiply. It would be a much smaller increase. But by the time you've built it, you have your bill of manufacture, which is a certain thing, and the actual final cost is usually a multiple of that. So it's always going to be amplified. And I don't think people are trying to rip each other off. It's just they've got to make a living out of it. I should probably do an ad because I've forgotten. So here's one. OZone 10 is the future of mastering. The new version includes Master Assistant, match your master to any reference file or files. Also, the Stabilizer module in Advanced adds clarity with intelligent and adaptive mastering EQ. Also included is the Impact module in Advanced, which enhances the rhythm by controlling microdynamics. Don't forget the code SONIC10 at iZotope.com/Sonictalk to save an additional 10% off any software purchase, not including subscriptions. And we thank them very much for their support. If you head over to iZotope.com, I think that's it, isn't it? Is it there? Here we go. iZotope.com/Sonictalk. You could save 10% off any iZotope plugin purchase with the code SONIC10. So we much appreciate their support as well. Yes, I think it's, I mean, that's another interesting thing. I mean, and I think with people who build small numbers can't get economy of scale. I mean, that's just the way it goes. I don't think they're necessarily. I mean, yes, Behringer can make things extremely cheaply, but they've got an entire factory and probably own half the world's components in this book. So
I'd tell you what was great to see though this year, Nick, was the amount of new module makers coming to market. I mean, we all had our, Make Noise were there, which was great, who haven't been there for a number of years. Obviously, with this, we've got a video coming out soon on Sonicstate for that.
That's the Spectraphon. That sounded brilliant.
Spectraphon, it did. Of course, there was, all your traditional module makers were there, but there was a lot of newbies, and that was really exciting to see as well. And a lot of things still also in kind of first iteration with, things scrawled on the panel using a pen as opposed to things being printed. Can I talk about one that I was drawn to, one of the new makers? I don't know if you did a video of them, though, so it was caught in my walk around, but it's a company called OK200, and they've done this kind of touch sequencer, performance-based sequencer, called the it's just gone from my head now. The Decade, I think it is, something like that. OK200, and I was really
Degree, was
really
it?
enjoying it. Degree, not Decade. Thank you.
Degree.
Thank you, Robert. Yeah, Degree.
Yeah. Thank you, Rob.
And check that one out. It's got this really interesting design. I first saw it on Instagram. months ago, and I was just like, oh, hang on, what's this all about? Because you've got these kind of capacitive touch sensors which you can play. You can record in what you play. You can quantize that. You can send in additional CV then to modulate that. You can change things octaves up and down with it. You can add glide to it. You can do ratcheting with it. It was, I mean, talk about, you know, sometimes you get a piece of equipment and you connect with it. This was definitely something that I connected with. This is something I've been looking for a while, something that really does sit along the line of sequencer versus a kind of a melody performance module, if you like. It was a combination of the two. It was such fun to play with, and the guy behind it, he's done some amazing work. I think he's still working out some bugs, and I think there's a version 2 coming, but that was definitely one of my favorites of the show.
Interesting.
That one, and Voicers or Voices. Actually, I just got their lead presser, which is this stereo compressor with sidechain input on it. They've just done this dual distortion unit called the Duo, what's it called? Duo Rover, I think it is. Their lead Rover's the mono channel, and they've done a stereo one. It's got filtering in it, high pass, low pass. You can change the order of them. You've got add resonance to it, so you can put the low end back on, and it just sounded brutal in terms of a distortion unit. So those two things were my kind of like, yeah.
Well, they're right in your pocket, really, aren't they? Part of your set.
Definitely.
Part of your set,
Totally, mate.
Absolutely. Who wants to go next with a selection? I think, should we do Dreadbox? I think Dreadbox is worth a mention, isn't it, Robin? Shall I just pop that in there quickly? We'll just go, here we go. I've got a bit of...
Hello Orpheus, there. How are you doing? Pretty good. Here at Superbooth 2023. We're having a nice time. It's the first day, and we have the pretty nice telepathy with us to present to you.
I knew you were going to say that.
Sorry?
It's telepathy.
Yeah, telepathy.
Come on then, so what is it?
So, telepathy is a single voice, a full voice module, which can have like 16 presets. It's a single voice with one oscillator.
Yeah, I watched the video, and basically it's a single voice Eurorack that can go into a control situation where there's a control module. You can have 6 of them. I don't know if there's a limit to that. And then each one can either be controlled by a master, so you end up with a 6 voice. So it's a bit like the Nymphis, perhaps, or you can split it. So, you know, 2 of them would be on one MIDI channel, 1 would be on a MIDI channel, you know, so you can make it multi-timbral. There's all kinds of stuff. I mean, it's an interesting thing. It's still, it's not an insignificant amount of cash for the full system. I think it's over, I can't remember what it is, it's 1,200 or 1,300 pounds, I think, or euros, I forget now. Maybe Robin, you can remember. But this again, you know, you brought this up because it was a different approach to polyphony as to what Tip Top would do.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. This is sort of polyphony, but working within what we already have and know and understand. I think their concession was it has MIDI in and out, so you end up linking them up via MIDI, and then you can play them together, and then those faders on the front become MIDI controllers for either the whole lot or bits of it, or allocated to different bits, or the whole thing becomes a MIDI controller over the whole synth, I think. So it's, you know, it's working within what we know and sort of works now, which I thought was just quite an interesting alternative to the Tip Top. You know, Tip Top go, let's do something completely bonkers and new, whereas Dreadbox going, well, this already works, and what can we do that's going to be interesting and perhaps bring, you know, something to the table that we can use now. You know, I thought that was just a very interesting comparison to each other in presenting, because there seems to be a need for polyphony. We're seeing it with the Nobula stuff as well, and Oxy Instruments, who I don't think they were there, but you know, there seems to be this little push to get a synth in there. You know, I'm happy with me beeps and me boops and me mono lines, this, that, and the other. I just want to bring in a big pad, or I want to bring in a piano, or something that's
get a JV 1080, Robin, and just get a JV 1080 and stick a MIDI keyboard on it.
Stick that in a rack.
So
yeah, I
there
don't
is something really
interesting
there,
you know.
Interesting thing I thought, with this Dreadbox system. So they're showing it with 6 linked together, but then at the end of the chain, they were also showing a little mixer module, and I thought it had a really clever idea, which is those mixer points. They don't have individual pans, but what you do is, as you plug in all of the 6 voices, I think the ones on the outer numbers, like 1 and 6, would be
they're further out, preset. Right, okay.
Hard panned, and then 2 and 5 would be a little bit closer in, and then however it works, and then you have a control which controls the width, so you can make all of the voices mono.
That's cool.
You could then modulate it, but you can invert it as well. So you can
that's
have
clever.
like your wider stereo moving across as all of the stereo kind of moves. And I just thought,
I think
really cool.
That's nice. I think the only thing that they have to get right, and I didn't know whether this was the case, because I think you could only make one a master of the rest, or maybe it's a master of the other ones that have the same MIDI channel. I'm not sure, because obviously if you grab one that's a slave, then how does it tell the master to move, so that and also I think Technomatic mentioned Technomatic, big shout out to Simon, Synth Anatomy as well. It's too compromised, might as well get a decent poly. I mean, and that's not a bad, that's sort of true as well, because essentially for the price, I mean, the Nymphis is it's about £500, so it's 6 voices, and you get a lot more synth depth to it. I mean, there is quite a lot of function shifts and all of that sort of stuff, but it does provide prolific. Would you go for something like this, Matt, or is it just take up too much room for your live system?
Yeah, for live, definitely. I mean, I'm working at 7U here, so there's no way. So that's why the polycinematic goes straight in there, because you've got 16 voices, I think, and you've got a filter, you've got an envelope in it, you've got envelope shape, you've got an amazing reverb. I actually told Jason that I'd like to see his reverb just stand alone. I don't know what he's doing with that, but it sounds great. But no, having all those voices, certainly not. The Chord 2 that I mentioned is probably the next largest that I'd go to if I wanted multiple voices. I have gone down the route of having individual oscillators and using them as different voices, but tuning is an issue. When I played live at Superbooth at the weekend, I was playing in the bright sunlight. I mean, you'll see it on the video. Literally, I'm glad I had factor 50 on, and I must have had to retune my oscillators about 5 times before I went on. I thought I better just keep checking this, because the sun was beaming down onto it. In fact, one of the modules, I won't tell you which, actually failed because I think it got overheated. So word of warning, if you're playing out live, get a fan or something installed. Yeah, don't play in the sun. Doesn't work.
There's a thought. Someone does a Eurorack cooling system. It's just a little module which has got a fan in it that sort of drops down like a blade and blows air in and out. Now you can have that for nothing, whoever it is who's designing these things.
Wicked.
I should now actually bring in a word from our friends over at Baby Audio, because I forgot. Baby Audio has released the BA1, which they describe as the modern reimagination of cultish 1982 analog synth that looked like a toy but sounded like a beast, the CS01 basically. It brings pure authentic textures that are fast to program and dripping in colour. They also impress upon us that have not just recreated but enhanced and moved the design forward, adding polyphony and a second analog modelled oscillator, FM, and the ability to drain the battery, which gives power sag that running down on the original one used to do. Pricing availability, regular price $99. It was actually on, if you want to save 15% on that, use the code ST23 to save that over at babyaudio.com. We thank them very much for their support. Okay, this is... Normally, we struggle for news items. Today, it's just like we could probably do about a 5-hour show easily to cover this. Who hasn't had a choice? Who would like to choose something?
What I would like to do, if that's okay, is just speed through this list and just like with one line of information about each of the
okay.
choices.
Yeah. All right. Why not we do that?
See, time is going to run out, and each one of these could spin off into things. Okay, Erica Synth's steam pipe. Like a really interesting new sort of approach to synthesis using physical modeling. Sort of made me think of Elements by Mutable Instruments, but substantial, big, interesting looking synth. Teenage Engineering, TP7, the little recorder. I mean, my goodness, a feat of engineering, very, very expensive for the functionality, but really, really, something really nice about that. Kind of got the gas for that. That's, like, ridiculous. PWM Mantis, amazing.
Yes, that was interesting.
Hybrid of the like a new Wasp and the Oscar, and a real kind of tribute to the late great Chris Huggett, and it's wonderful to see his name emblazoned on the back there, really kind of making that synth like it was the last thing that he worked on before he sadly died, and and it kind of sums together some of his greatest hits, and I think looks really brilliant, unique, and a very British synthesizer.
Yes.
Okay, we did the Gemini, the Norand Mondo, the Tempura Granular. That's that beautiful little looking, really interesting. And this is the first of 3 little granular delights, which I've picked as definite grainy kind of granular theme this year. But the little Tempura, you can have like 8 channels of granular channels. Really interesting approach as well to the interface. Really worth checking out. Tempura Granular, the Tasty Chips, GR
the Mega.
Yeah, which is we've seen the GR1. I had one here for a short while. Shot a video many years ago with it, but it's just like the beast of all beasts if you're into granular, which I know many of you are. So definitely check that one out. And then the last one of the granular little trilogy there is the Clavis Grainity, which is definitely one of the most interesting ideas I heard at this year's Superbooth. In principle, it's an all analog, essentially filter module, but with digital control, and the digital aspect of it cuts the filters into tiny grains so the sound. So it's like analog granular.
That's interesting.
So that's something to check out. And nearly there, Beep Boop with the tape rack, which Jack is amazing. Got a personal story about that. I was at the concert that Jack was talking about. I was with Jack watching Jerome Nottinger doing his incredible performance, and Jack just sort of like, you could virtually see the light bulb over his head. But watch the Sonic video, the Beep Boop. It's like a big long tape loop in a 1U form.
He's so enthusiastic, isn't he? It's just brilliant. He was so buzzing.
Yeah, nearly there. Fine Gear, I thought, had just the most incredible 2 things that they were showing. We know Fine Gear from their dust collector, a really odd, large.
The Mod Mix, yeah.
The Mod Mix, 4-channel, which is a massive mixer for 4 channels, but it does so many interesting things. And I think that was priced at about $1,300, which actually, for the beast, what it is, that actually looks really good. But they were also showing the follow-up, I suppose, to the dust collector, which is called the Dirt Magnet. And that's got a tape, a real tape loop in there, which is made from cassettes, and they're going to do a video to show you how you can make your own tape loops for it using just regular cassettes. So I thought that was pretty cool, but also a whole bunch of really interesting and unusual collection of effects within this quite odd form factor. The Lambda Polypulse is
that's mad.
Yeah, very peculiar, totally different like interface. You've got 5 different touch panels. I think it's like a kind of weirdy synth groove boxy polyphonic thing. And then I'm nearly there. Just Bifaco FX Boy. It's like a modular where you can effects unit that uses Game Boy cartridges as a means of like having different effects. So I think you might be able to buy these. I think it comes with 7 cartridges.
Yes, FX Boy. Yeah,
you kind of using the old Game Boy format for the cartridges. So, and then finally the Kiviak Wofi, which is the SQ1. The SK1 Casio SK1 for the 21st century that we will want for a very long time. Yeah.
Interesting.
There we go.
I'd like to give a shout. If we're talking about granular, Arturia released their update for the Mini Freak, the Micro Freak, which has sample.
Got it installed here.
They found 2 minutes of sample storage in that. So there's obviously loads of DSPs sitting around that they haven't used. Robin, any other highlights for you?
A couple of little mentions that just squeeze in. One of them is the Jam Sandwich. From a little company called Electro Jam, and this is I'm not entirely sure. Well, it's not perhaps as weird as it may sound. It's just a little sequencer, but the important thing about this sequencer is it's designed for someone who's blind. So it has audio description built in. So every time you touch a knob, every time you turn something, it's telling you what you're doing out of another channel. So you can have that connected to a speaker, and it says
That's
knob
handy.
1 on, knob 2, this kind of thing. And all of the icons on it are very large. It's got a big visual display. And this guy basically designed it because he was performing live with Electron boxes, and then sort of woke up one morning and could no longer see the display. And so his eyesight's been deteriorating. And so he went to work designing, and this is the first module, I think, ways of working that are less visually important, which is weird to go into Eurorack because we see it as a very visual format, but it's actually a very feely format. You can feel your way around a Eurorack that you can't do on a Groovebox. And so he's very much into designing inclusive, differently abled, useful
I think I remember that I spoke to one of the organisers, and he said he kind of practically lost it when he saw that happening. He just sort of felt that was sort of the whole reason that they do what they do for these moments where and he had a huge crowd of people all around him, and he was just showing what, and everybody was just like, wow, that's amazing. And because it was to fulfill a particular need of his diminishing eyesight, he just said it was very special for him. Nice choices.
At the other end of unworthiness would be the ultra audio time tosser, or the wave wanker, as he suggested it might be called in Eurorack, which is there's a wonderful row of 8 buttons that basically remixes on the fly. So it buffers a bit of audio and you sync it up, and so you can then re-trigger or ratchet stuff. And it's a desktop unit that I've reviewed previously, but now it's being worked into Eurorack, so you can do the same thing with CV or CV control it or something. And it's just a barrel load of fun. If you have the courage in live performance to pretend like you're remixing not pretend, you are remixing on the fly, like you're down with the kids, then it's a whole load of fun to play with. It's just,
that sounds really good. I can imagine if you put CV into that would be really interesting rather than audio. That would make an awful lot of sense. That would be really cool. Yeah, nice. Are you done, or is there more?
All right, well, one more then. Okay, quick. It's Janet.
You don't have to. I mean,
there's so much. The Gliss from Bella, which was a simple touch strip controller, but very much like the Sound Machine's LS1, if you're familiar with that. But this one was very light up and very visual. I like that sort of thing. You could pull things apart and basically draw in your own modulation, and you could record up to a minute of movement, which generates voltage and pressure, which you can then stuff into your system. That was nice. Great. And anything from this is not rocket science is awesome.
And that was the Bop and Steve. Yeah, that was good.
Bop and Steve, which was a great.
It was my first video actually. After.
Oh, was it? Yeah, sort of a deconstructed reverb, which was a lot of fun. So I will.
Yeah, nice.
Concede at that point.
Matt, anything else that you feel should get an honourable mention? I'm sure there must be.
Yeah, just 2. And as you know, I naturally gravitate to quite doomy sounds, making quite a lot of visceral hard techno. So it was great to see Scott back in from industrial
Harvestman,
music electronics.
Scott Yeager,
Harvestman. Love that guy. Brilliant. I love the way he talks about his modules too. And he had this Volkmeyer's Inferno. I think I read somewhere that it's named after a very difficult level that's almost impossible to complete on a computer game. I don't know what it's called. But this, going back to granular, it's kind of like a crossover between a granular unit crossed with oscillators and the ability to morph between them. And it wasn't quite finished yet, but it was great to see him back there showing that off. And then there was also, of course, who else was just gone from my mind now, who does really doomy kind of, Schlappy Engineering. So I've got a couple of their modules. In fact, I'm going to do a couple of videos for them. I've got the angle grinder, which we was making.
I like ankle grinder better. Could we get them to rename it?
We can call the show that. We was making kick drums from that, and it was just, I was like, I need to get this out as soon as I get home. And I was also playing with the 3-body, which is this 3 oscillator cross mod. Yeah, it's crackers. Loved it. I think it's Eric Schlappy, I think that's his name. Talking to him and going through his modules is exactly what I mentioned before. Opening that door, walking into his mind, and you just like, Right, I get you. I know exactly where you come from, and I know how passionate you are about making this and what it can achieve. One last thing was, of course, these guys, Maya EMI. We've got a video again coming up for this soon, haven't we, Nick? For the MD900.
Yep, MD900.
They were showing this off, but what they've also done is they've kind of cut it in half, like kept the touchscreen and stuff, and made a smaller version of it. Exactly the same guts, so it does exactly the same thing, 4-part multi-timbral, same amount of oscillators, effects, everything, but smaller. And they're also developing these boxes, I/O boxes, so you can get more ins and outs, whether that's the CV connection or audio connection. And it was great meeting up. Again, speaking to Holger and the team who makes this, there's some. Do you know what, Nick? We're surrounded by such intelligent, clever people. I just make weird music with this lot. I don't pretend to know exactly how they're made, but I've probably just, if there was a bomb to go off in Superbooth, the amount of intelligent people we would lose from this earth would be unfathomable.
Yeah, there's lots of very smart.
They would defuse it before it went off, though.
That's true. Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, good. A good thought.
No.
I'd just like to bring a couple of honourable mentions of myself. Obviously, there was so much. Obviously, the Electron Analog Heat Plus Effects. I mean, that's a big release. We didn't even get round to that. There was, of course. Oh no, I forgot what else I was going to say. That was a really big one. The Korg acoustic synth that we saw with Tats, that was really interesting. I mean, there's so many things that got released here or got first mentioned. I mean, it was really like, the gates just opened, and I think part of this was because NAMM was out of reach for a lot of people, because of traveling or expense, and also people have been having to work a lot on redesigning things, and because they're smaller companies, it's taken a while. So this Superbooth is sort of the first opportunity that they got to release their ideas and their stuff into the world. And I think there's just so much there. We've got a ton of videos up there, and there's probably 3 or 4 more to go. But just look at that. Sorry, Gaz.
There is another thing, isn't there? I don't know if it just happened to launch at the same time, but the little Roland Ira Compact S1, which is just really cool. And people who've been using it are just like, wow, this thing is for I think, what's it, about 160 quid or something? But
I think we're getting one for review, actually, yeah.
Yeah, so were they there? Were Roland there? Because was that launched?
No, Roland weren't there. No, it was just coincidental. Yeah, wow. Which is a really bad idea, because most organisations, all their people are going to be on the ground there. So I don't know if the story even got posted here, but I mean, I did get a heads up. But when you're in Superbooth, there's really no point in expecting anybody to do anything outside of their immediate point of focus. I mean, like I say, we were flat out the entire time.
I think that S1 has surprised people, though, because I think with this little kind of the tweak synth range or whatever, this little, the things are generally kind of cut back, but this one isn't. It's actually surprisingly deep. So, sorry, not related to Superbooth, but related to new stuff.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think if there was any other stuff. Inevitably there was, and we will have got. There's the some new bookless stuff. There was the new. Matt's there with the finger up.
The finger is up. Enjoy Electronics, The Godfather.
Oh my goodness!
Which is this rack-mounted, triple delay line with compression on it, and I use the term vibe a lot. I like vibe in my music, and as well as hard industrial techno, it's got to have vibe, of course. And using delays is often the way that I do that. You can send anything to a delay, it sounds cool. This thing's got 3 in it, it's got filters in it, it's got a compressor in it. I think it's Eurorack compatible in terms of its size. Yeah. It's about the size of a
It's not new. We saw it at Synthfest last year. It was.
Okay.
It has been out. Yeah. But we definitely saw that. I just a couple of shout outs. I want to say a shout out to Carl Bedford in the chat, because I bumped into him. I know he's a mate of Dom's as well. We spent a couple of moments reminiscing. It was, obviously, Dom was there at the last one, and it was great, and as were lots of other people. But he was very missed, as you were, Gaz, as well. But it was just another quick roundup. I mean, there were so many people. It felt like we were up by a certain number. There was quite a lot more people there, I would say. And it just felt, and the exhibitors, because they had an extra 60 people because the sports hall wasn't open last time. So there were another 60 exhibitors there.
Wow.
I mean, Oberheim, OBX8 desktop, that was there as well. We almost forgot, it's just how crazy it was. So.
The superlative Monolab 1210, it's just a beautiful looking sort of subtractive synth, but just in that really kind of unique format. Do you know that one? Did you see that one?
I didn't. We did do a video, but I didn't watch it or film it, so I haven't had a chance.
Solar 42 is another one worth a mention. The Elton Music.
Oh, good shout.
That's
Solar
interesting.
42.
That's interesting. Yeah, we did that. I mean, Chris D, he was really enamoured by that. I reviewed the Solar 50. And the Q is it's a microtonal drone machine, and all I remember doing most of the time I was reviewing it was trying to tune it up because it had 50 oscillators. I don't know whether this one's got 42, and that somehow makes it easier. But if they fixed that and made the tuning easier, because honestly, you do something and go, oh, this is great, and then. Like the Lyra 8, it's quite hard to. There's actually some control law to those tunings, whereas on the Elta, it was those tiny little kind of plastic nylon nerve. Trying to micro tune stuff with that. I found it sounded beautiful, but it was incredibly infuriating. So I do hope they fix that, because it was lovely. It was just one of those things that is. Because you can't tune it to itself, how are you going to tune it with anything else? It almost has to be, you have to build stuff around it and expect everybody to tune on the fly to you, at least in the 50. Maybe the 42's been changed, but it did sound lovely, that demo. Good shout, Robin.
I think it's evolved a little bit with that. I think they've reduced the oscillator count, but also built in some melodic voices. So it's not just setting up some sort of drone wash. You can now sort of play it, I think, is the key. But it was the loveliest sounding thing.
Yeah, it did sound good
as far as demos goes.
We've been totally focused on hardware, but I mean, UE Zebra 3 being shown.
Yes, that's what I was going. Yeah,
first time.
That was amazing.
Zebra, yeah, well, one of the most beloved sort of software instruments. It's been a long time in the making. What is it? It was first sort of talked
2012.
About. Yeah, wow. Yeah, so that's that's big news. Yeah,
there was a whole section for software people this year, wasn't there? There was. I shot that video I did a couple of software things. I shot the video with Urs, and that was really interesting because that new wave editor, the MSEG editor, and the set that is. It's deep it's incredibly deep and really impressive. I mean, the morphing between the waves, it's really, wow. I also shot something called by Kong something or other called Strokes. I'm trying to think. I think we've got a Synaptic video somewhere, another one of the, but that's one of the stragglers that we'll get round to. We've got a client in tomorrow with something very exciting to film, which will be coming out next week as well. So it's impossible to
analog heat
too much
effects and the analog heat.
That's right. We shot that. That was a big one too.
And noise engineering as well. But their stereo wavefolding filter. Shout out to Patrick. I think he's in the chat. Lovely to have met you as well, Patrick.
And actually, 4MS looping delay and the sampler, those two modules together. Dan did a really good. We got a great demo of that, and it was the looper is amazing because you can construct and deconstruct, but if you use the delay, you can clock that off the looper and kind of build sound on sound loops and then bring them into the looper, and then it's just mind-boggling. He did a really good that is well worth checking out. That actually had some incredible capability.
The modal Carbon 8, which is the third in the range of those, which is what's that? And that's a phase distortion based synth as well. So.
I think so. I told them they should release for the promo of that. They should release a sparkling drink to go with it. That was obviously carbonated, but so they may or may not take me up on that. I mean, I would if I was them, but hey. Well, yeah. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And I know we've just been sort of listing loads of things, but literally, I don't think when we usually do these shows, there comes a certain point where we've done, 10 or 20 or 30 videos, and then you're sort of just going and looking at things that are maybe updates or whatever. This was literally I don't know. I think we're probably, like I say, over 100 videos, which is a record for us of all new things, pretty much. And that was quite. So that just shows you how big.
Can we do a pick? Can we do a pick of the show? Can we do a pick of the show?
Okay, all right. Well, let's finish up with that. Let's finish because I know people have probably got stuff to go with. So, best in show. Can I go first? Because then I think for me. I mean, the UDO obviously was the big granddaddy because it was the big thing, but I think the Norand Mono Mark II, just for innovation and interest, might be my pick of the show, actually. What about you then, Gaz?
I know I suggested it. It's really hard. The Gemini, the Mantis, the Norand. I'm going to go with UDO as best in show because I think it's caused the biggest impression.
Yeah,
and,
I think that's fair enough. Cool.
I beg your pardon. I did have some disagreement in the ranks there.
So, Matt, what is your dog's best in show then?
Well, her name is Juno, so she's probably going to go with something Roland. But I'm going to pick the newcomer, the OK200, the Degree, just because I thought that was quite innovative. I think it's something we haven't quite got out there right now, from a performance aspect, from a sequencing aspect, from a jamming aspect, from an interface aspect, and the newcomer. And I really want to support the newbies coming through as well. So, yeah, well done.
Good shout, good shout. I should point out that you're probably going to be looking for links to all of these things in the show notes. I'm afraid that's not going to happen because it would take me hours to go through this. So I'm just going to say that right out there to begin with. If you want to check, I mean, if you just do a search on YouTube for any of the things we mentioned, I've tagged things. Hopefully it should be pretty good. So
there's a playlist on the Sonicstate site for.
Yeah, there's a full playlist. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Robin, how about you? What was your pick of the show?
Well, just to go for something different that we haven't talked about, another sort of entry from a new company, I think, is the Kaona Skippy, which is a gorgeous-looking URAC module with a circular interface in the middle, which is essentially a 4-channel trigger sequencer, but beautifully realized with lots of interesting MIDI effect type tools, or rather algorithms and Euclidean bits and pieces and tape stops and strangeness, but this wonderful sort of eye of circular within circles of sequencing. I quite like that. Didn't get to see it. Would have liked to have spoken to the bloke, but never did. But I think it looks stunning.
That's a shame. Next time. Well, we can only look forward to the next Superbooth, which I mean, if it doesn't rain, which the weather was absolutely fantastic this time. I mean, we thought it might rain and it didn't. I think there were 3 or 4 spots of rain on the Saturday night after it was all over, so it was fine. There was no rain. I mean, just amazing, and hopefully that may that long continue, because just being out in the woods and doing it in the in the outside is really good, but obviously not so much fun if your roof is leaking and you've got expensive electronics in a tent. I'd imagine that would be a little bit less than fun, but fantastic. So yeah, brilliant work by all of our team, Andy, Ed, Chris, the 2 Chris's, Simon Forsyth, Ben Robbins, and there's other people. Yes, I can't remember. And now and also the Superbooth team. Fantastic. So, thank you, everybody. I hope you will all. We'll probably have to switch things off just because we've been going a while, and I've got to get this edited up tonight. But thank you, everybody, for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it there. And Gaz, viewing from afar, hopefully we'll see you there next year. But that was the end of the show. So we'll see you all next time. Thank you very much. See you later. Bye bye now.
Bye.